Yo, what's going on? My name is Caustic and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be covering how to process vocals. I have created a one knob rack where you can essentially go through the entire processing chain of a vocal start to finish by just twisting a couple of knobs instead of messing with each individual effect. I've already dialed all of these in for you just to make it a little bit easier for you, but I want to show you how to process vocals and then how to use this rack. We have the starter vocal here of what we're going to be working with. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. And we have the final result here. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. Sounds so much better, so much cleaner, so much more crisp. You can hear it better, the pronunciation is better. Just all in all, this vocal sits a lot better than the original take. So I'm going to be walking you through how to use this rack and how I process my vocals. We'll cover the rack towards the end of the video, but I will have these available free for you in the description below. Let's get into the video. Alrighty, so we have the vocal that we are going to be working with here. This is going to be the original take. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. Now, first thing that I tend to do is I throw on a Melodyne. If you don't know what Melodyne is, it is essentially kind of like a helper to your auto-tune where you can actually fine-tune and correct the notes before going into an auto-tune, so then that way that auto-tune doesn't have to work so hard and doesn't possibly snap to the wrong note. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click this transfer button and we're going to just play this vocal out here. If you do know this song, I apologize. I did my best to do this take, but this is just more for demonstration purposes, and this is the best song that I found that I could show you guys. So yeah, we'll clip this transfer button here. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got closer than all my friends. Perfect. So now we have the full vocal here. So now what we can do is we can kind of correct these notes just a little bit. Woke up in self-destruction. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and do. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. Okay, cool. So we're gonna get kind of close here. I love my sins, they're all. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got closer than all my friends. There we go. So we got a vocal that's pretty close to the key that's in. Melodyne is a kind of software that every single vocal producer works with. Every single producer that works with vocals works with, regardless of kind of where you're at in the production. Higher end production and like professional production will always use this for vocals, just to make sure that they are right. And then we use a waves here. This is going to be my auto-tune of choice, just because you don't need a subscription for this. It's a one-time purchase. Phenomenal plugin if you haven't checked this out. I'm going to kind of adjust the speed here, and I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go. I love the kind of auto-tune sound, like T-Pain. Love that kind of like auto-tune sounding on vocals. I'm going to do a little bit more natural here just for demonstrational purposes on this vocal specifically. But we are going to find the key here. And so I'm going to come down to major. We can start with major and kind of scan through these. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got closer than all my friends. So that's going to be the key that we are going to be working in, is C major. to find the key of your vocal, just kind of sift through all of these and just make sure that, you know, just find the one that most of the notes kind of balance through together. Coming out of Melodyne, they should be on point, but there's a possibility that you may have put them in the wrong spot. That's totally fine though, just use your ears, and then once you get it sounding correct on the auto-tune here, we're going to move into the vocal processing. So what I'm going to do first is throw on a glue compressor here, and we're going to be using this to just compress this vocal and make it a little bit more even across the board. When you use compression on a vocal, you're typically just trying to make it more, I forget what the word is, precise, or like the same kind of, you want it more even. That's what I was looking for. You want it to be an even kind of sounding dynamic between the highs and the lows. So we are going to use this threshold here to kind of dial that in. I typically use glue compressor just because using compression, it's a lot easier for me to kind of overshoot my compressor just because of the line and dragging this down. So I stick to glue compressor. And basically what I'm looking for here is making sure that the needle hits about 5, doesn't go above that, and then it kind of sits in the middle between 0 and 5 through the majority of the vocal there. That's just the value that I have found working with vocals in my music that works the best. If I have found that if you push past 5 and go towards the 10, you can get overcompressed vocals, and that's not what we want, especially for a top lead. So we are going to want to just do some light compression on this. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got closer than all my friends. That sounds great. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use this makeup gain a little bit to boost the volume from the threshold that we kind of lost while compressing. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. It sounds a little bit better, a little bit more clean. So after we do the glue compression that we are going to then use in OTT, I use X for Serum or X for OTT just because I like this downward compression knob. Basically what this does is it compresses the floor into the compressor doesn't compress the peaks down, it pushes the floor up. Just making it a little bit more present. I have found, especially with vocals, this helps the pronunciation of the vocals and the clarity of the vocals coming through. So I use this here. We put the downward about here. The depth is going to be your dry wet. We're going to turn the time all the way up here, and then we're going to increase the depth here as this plays. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. So that sounds about good there. I'm going to also use a gate to minimize the noise in between the words being saying. I woke up in self. And typically how I do this is I just record my microphone here. So we're going to arm this. Cool, just so we can get some noise. And now we have this noise here, so we're going to use this gate. Yeah, you can hear that a lot better with the OTT and with the gate off. So we're going to use this gate here. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got closer than all my friends. We're going to increase this just a little bit so that breath doesn't catch it too hard. I know we got closer than all my friends. Perfect. So now we have compression. We got some gate here. We got OTT. Now I'm going to use a little bit of saturation because I always use saturation after OTT. I just like the warmth that it brings to the overall signal. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. Sweet, so now we have a little bit of a better sounding vocal here if I just kind of group these and then turn this off. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. It's a little bit louder just because we've been pushing it with some compression, some OTT, but the overall clarity of the vocal is a lot better than the original. So now what we can do here is we are going to then use some EQ. A great way of kind of looking at vocals here, especially when you're EQing, when you're kind of sitting there and you're like, well, what do I EQ? General rule of thumb on the EQ on the Ableton here, in between 1,000 hertz and about 5,000 hertz. So right up to about here, this point here. So this range right here is going to be where the pronunciation of most words comes from. Regardless of what singer is singing, majority of the words are going to be sitting right about here. So if you're losing a little bit of clarity in your vocal, chances are a good little boost to this will probably help that clarity come out. You'll be able to hear the words a little bit more. In my rack, I go through all of this, and I'll walk through all of that with you in just a moment of how to use the rack, because we are almost done here. But yeah, so this is going to be where the pronunciation of all of your words are. If you sound a little more nasally, like I do, you're going to want to actually kind of decrease this a little bit, because this is where also that nasally kind of sound will sit as well. So this is just going to be adjusted purely based on the vocal that you have, the kind of singer that you have, and you can either boost or drop that. For higher end stuff, this is going to be like the air is kind of what this is referred to, and so it's going to be like the s that sits on top of all the audio. You can boost this a little bit. I can show you what this sounds like when it's boosted. So we're going to reset these here.
I woke up in...
Reset that.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all...
So it really highlights like T's, S's, C's, like all of that. So it will give a little bit more air to the vocal by boosting that up. And then the third point that we have typically that you look at for vocals is going to be the mid-lows.
I woke up in self-destruction mode.
So this is going to be more of kind of like the bassy, like the deep part of the vocal coming out of the singer. And so you can kind of boost this or cut it as need be. If you have too much or you have too little, you can kind of push this up here. And so what we're going to do with this vocal is I am going to use all three of these points here. So
I woke up.
We're going to add a little bit of air here.
I woke up in self-destruction mode.
I'm going to decrease the nasaliness of this just a little bit.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got closer than all my friends. I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got closer than all my friends.
We have the little more help on the pronunciation with this air here, getting the T's, C's, and S's. And then we have me cutting out a little bit of the nasaliness and then boosting a little bit more of the lows to kind of compensate for these lost frequencies here. So that is kind of my approach that I would take to editing this vocal. Then what we're going to want to do here is throw on reverb of your choice. I love Valhalla Reverb because I just love the warmth that it gives to the overall vocal. We're going to turn this mix down here.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got closer than all my friends.
Typically, most of the time, the vocal is not going to be under about 100 hertz. Like, you'll have some frequencies that do sit under 100 hertz. Not that you want to reverb, though. So I normally bring this low cut up just a little bit to just kind of compensate. And just, again, depending on who's singing, this will dictate where that level sits. But I have found about 200 to 250 is a pretty good area to sit in. But yeah. And then we have a little bit of delay that we can add to this here. And we're going to throw on, we're going to just do a little bit here, drop the feedback quite a bit. We're going to use this curve here to kind of just target the pronunciation of the words. I don't like doing it too into the high end of the sound just because you can hear it a lot clearer. I feel like adding a little bit of delay helps the vocal sit a little bit better, and it also creates more space in like terms sonically.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go.
It adds just a nice little bed for the vocal. But I do this on ping pong so you can get a little bit more width.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again.
It sounds a little muddy, but when you throw it into the context of an overall track, it sounds really nice. But that is how I process my vocals here.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got closer than all of my friends.
And so that's kind of, again, that's just how I process my vocals. But I took the time out of my day to sit down and actually make a one knob rack for you guys, so that if you are a little newer to vocal production, or you just want a simpler version to do this, I have an entire rack for you to use. You can just turn a couple of knobs and call it good, rather than going through and tweaking individual things. So yeah, let's jump into those racks here. So we have two different versions. I have one that uses Valhalla Reverb, and then the other one is fully stock Ableton. The only plugin that you will need is this X for OTT. If you go to the website here, it's going to be a little hard to find, so I would recommend typing in X for OTT, and then go to X for Records with this link here. It'll bring you to the download page, and you can download the plugin free of charge here. And yeah, that's going to be the only plugin that the Ableton stock uses. Apart from that, everything is built into Ableton. So we can kind of cover exactly what this is doing here. So
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again.
The vocal is dry here. We have a little bit of saturation, but this is just built into the rack here a little bit for you, so you don't have to do that. Let me explain kind of how this works here. So basically, it's a linear pattern, and you go through the entire thing. I have the glue compressor here, so you can kind of see the needle of how much you are compressing. I like to see the needle, so I left that there. And then the delay here, just in case you need to edit this curve. You can also change the time here using this knob, so it doesn't have to be on triplets for you. But I'm going to just leave it on triplets because this is how it comes when you load it up. And we will start kind of editing this vocal. So with this comp amount, this is going to be your threshold, and so you can kind of drag this down and until the vocal is hitting in between 0 and 5.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know.
That's sitting very well. Also, I just kind of wanted to walk you through my vocal processing prior to jumping into this rack, just so you kind of understand a little bit more of what you are doing with these knobs specifically. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the description below if I did not say something super clearly, or you're so confused about something, and I will do my best to make sure I answer that for you. But yeah, we have the compressor here. This is going to be the threshold. Then we have the comp gain. This is going to be the makeup gain for the glue compressor.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again.
I also want to state too that each one of these knobs can drastically change how the vocal sounds, so be very sparing with them and go at slow paces, and then you can always come back and tweak them later. It's very easy to overdo it though, so I do have most of these kind of locked into a specific range. Still though, it's very easy to overdo. Next we have the gate here. This is going to be kind of set at the overall place where noise would come through. If you have a noisier mic, you can open up this gain here. Again, do a little bit of a test audio where you're not saying anything and you're just capturing the noise of the microphone. And then you can adjust this threshold knob accordingly. And this will just raise or lower the bar depending on how much noise you have with the microphone of the vocal that you're working with. Next, we have the OTT amount. I already have this OTT dialed in for you, so you just have to increase this, and this will be the dry wet. So if we play this vocal.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again.
Again, using the OTT just to enhance pronunciation of the vocal here. And so that's kind of all we're looking for with this.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again.
That sounds like a great value there, so we're going to leave that there. Next, we have the reverb delay. So this is going to be set to about 4 seconds on the reverb. You can adjust this however much you like, depending on how much reverb that you would like to have in terms of tail. If you want a shorter reverb, you can drop this down all the way to 500 milliseconds there, but we're going to leave this on 4 seconds, and then increase the dry wet of the reverb.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know.
I think one of the biggest things that I struggled with was reverb when I was doing my vocal production. So basically, if you want to look at this, as you're kind of sitting here, right? And you have all of your elements, and this will be your vocal. So it's sitting in front of your face, and then you have the drums. So the vocal will be your primary focus when you are listening to a song as a listener. And then you'll hear the drums and all the other elements going on in the background. As you increase the dry wet of a reverb, it slowly pushes that vocal away from you, further back into the mix, which then makes other elements like drums and synths more present and kind of take over. So if you're losing your vocal in the mix, just kind of look at where your reverb level is sitting, because if you put it up too high, it will push it back into the mix and it will no longer be the center point of your focus when you're listening to a song. So be very mindful of this reverb amount. You can do post-process or parallel post-processing. That is an entire beast of itself. Basically, you're just mixing a dry signal, a fully dry signal, and a fully wet signal together to kind of layer them a little bit more. I just use the reverb amount because it's simpler and it's one knob as opposed to doing a whole bunch of different things. So yes, but be very sparing with how much reverb you put on it unless it is a background vocal, and then you can kind of crank this. But we'll do about 14%.
I woke up in self-destruction mode.
16%. We'll do 16%. But yeah, so we have some reverb here. Now we have the reverb time. If you wanted to change this at all, I'm going to just leave this on triplets at the moment. We'll set the delay amount, and this will just be your dry wet on the delay here.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again.
And we also do have our feedback knob as well, so you can adjust how much delay is coming through and how much feedback is coming through.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again.
And then the last things that we have in this rack are EQs. So we have vocal air. This will just give your vocal more air by increasing that shelf.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know.
We can do about 2, get a little bit of a higher crisp on that vocal. And then we have pronunciation and nasal knob. So you can decrease this to help nasaliness throughout the vocal, and you can increase this to increase the pronunciation of the words. And so with this specifically, because it's more nasally, I'm going to decrease this.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got closer than all my friends.
I'm going to increase this vocal air just a little bit more to kind of compensate for those lost frequencies. And then we can go to the low mids, and then you can drop a little bit more of the bass, or you can increase a little bit more of the bass in the vocal. So I'm going to increase a little bit more as we go.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got closer than all my friends.
And we have a process vocal here. So that we have the original vocal.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got closer than all my friends.
This is the rack, the one knob rack here for you guys. Just simplifying the processing of vocals a little bit more for you. And then I do also have the other rack here. And this is going to be with the Valhalla reverb on it, and I have the same parameters tied to the Valhalla reverb instead of the Ableton stock reverb. I would highly recommend getting Valhalla reverb just because it sounds cleaner and nicer to me. We can kind of do a compare and contrast of these because they do sound quite different. But we have the Valhalla here.
I woke up in self-destruction mode. I press go and I do it again. I love my sins, they're all I know. We got closer than all of my friends.
The only reason I like Valhalla better is I feel like it bleeds with the vocal better. With the stock, I feel like there is a little bit more distinction between the separation between the vocal and the reverb. Again, personal preference, but I wanted to be able to make 2 racks for you guys, one with Valhalla reverb and one with stock if you do not have Valhalla reverb. And so, yeah, but you guys can get either one or both of these racks down in the description below. Once again, if you guys have any questions based on what I talked about in this video or any future production questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and I will make a video for you to kind of just answer and walk you through whatever you're wondering. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Love you guys. Have an amazing rest of your day. I will see you in the next video.